Hey everyone, David here. Wanted to let you all know that we ran into some major bugs while trying to record this episode. However, we are dedicated to getting the content to you. So, we did our best. There is going to be some spots where it's a little bit iffy, with some lag here and overlap there. But, as the editor, I think it sounds pretty good. But enough with the preamble and patting myself on the back. Let's get to the episode. Hurrah!
Hi guys, welcome to CosplayStitchAndSeam. I'm Pannon.
And I'm V-Fire. Hi.
Yay. Hi. Back from all of our summer con stress. So welcome back. We hope you enjoyed some of our traveling episodes. Just a few announcements before we get into the episode. As always, you can send us your horror stories, your fun at con stories, wholesome uplifting stories of fun things you've learned or found out about through cosplay. And you can send them to us at
CosplayStitchandSeam@gmail.com, or you can go to our website
CosplayStitchandSeam.com or
the Facebook group. I was like, or what? Or the Facebook group.
or the Facebook group.
Yes.
Which is now 400 people strong, at least now, which is awesome. Thank you guys for hanging out there. There's lots of fun things to do. Please introduce yourselves. Let us know if there's a page to follow. We love seeing your progress photos. And everyone's favorite seems to be the Work in Progress Wednesdays. I swear I see like more phenomenal stuff every single week that we've been running those. So please keep sharing and keep supporting each other. I love seeing like all the positive comments on everybody's work. If you would like to help us out with bandwidth and website costs and things like that, you can donate to our Ko-fi account, which is CosplayStitch. So we've got some cons upcoming that are actual cons that we will be doing live shows at, which is really cool. Our first one coming up is Non-DesuCon in Denver, Colorado. That's our first out-of-state one where all three of us are going to be there. We'll probably be organizing a gathering, and we will definitely be doing an episode. If you guys have input on what you would like our episode to be about, please let us know. We will actually already be doing a body positivity panel. We'll have all three of us and hopefully a couple local cosplayers. But if you have a topic, if you're from Denver especially, like we would love to know like what's a hot topic in your community? What would you like us to cover? What perspective does Denver offer that people need to know about?
Give us some shout-outs and suggestions. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah.
Gotta love that lag.
How dare. I'll also be doing a live show at Anime Bonsai, which is in Salt Lake, or Layton, actually.
Layton.
So, Layton. My Utah accent is showing up a little bit there. So if you would like to suggest a topic for that, especially if you are local and you say Layton, please
T's don't exist in Utah, except for in Utah. Never mind.
Let us know what would be a good topic to cover. We'll be there in person. We'll probably have some ribbons, because I know y'all like ribbons. And we'll also be collecting horror stories, as always, at both of these cons. So
yes, another Halloween episode.
So those cons are coming up. Non-DesuCon is at the end of August, and Anime Bonsai is in October. As always, if you would like to suggest or to your local con that you would like to have us come do a live show there, please let your local conventions know or let us know, and we can send them some information on how we can arrange that. So that would be super fun. Anything else?
We covered conventions. We covered our intro.
Yes.
I think we're good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's introduce our guest and topic.
Yes, we
What's
have a
the
guest
secret
today
word of
who
the
has
day? Just kidding.
Been so nicely quiet while we have ranted back and forth here. So today we have, as a special guest, we have Krystal, aka Sumikins. And we are talking about basically getting your makerspace in order and organizing that. We talked a little bit about storage for cosplay in a past episode, but this is about getting your space to be the most conducive it can be to your creativity. So Krystal, I will let you go ahead and introduce yourself. Sorry, I keep cutting you off, Mercedes.
I want to say a thing. We're going to talk about your project space and organizing it, and I'm so excited for this one because I'm still working on mine 6 months later.
Oh, man.
Yay! Yeah, I'm like actually neck deep in mine right now. Like I'm completely revamping my whole space. So this is like very perfectly timed for me.
Perfect. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your cosplay history.
Yeah.
So, you already got my name, but I'll say it again. I'm Krystal. I've been cosplaying since about 2002. So a long time. I'm cosplay grandma at this point.
Well, you look great.
Thanks. I'm moisturized. But no, seriously. I don't make as many costumes per year as I used to. I now focus on just doing 1 or 2 per year for usually big competition pieces. That's kind of the way that I've gravitated over the years. In addition to being active with the competitive scene, I also currently run the cosplay contest for SakuraCon in Seattle, Washington. So now I'm on the other side of the board. So my life is very busy with cosplay things.
Nice. And where can people follow you if they'd like to see more of your work?
So probably the best place to do that is on Instagram, where my username is Sumikins. That's the one that I update the most. You can find me pretty much anywhere under Sumikins, but Instagram's the one that I update the most. If you want to check out all of my past works, like my portfolio kind of stuff and all of my skits, you can go to my website, which is www.sumikinscosplay.com.
Nice.
And I just got that up and running again, so hopefully it's good.
Speaking of organized. Right there. So one of the first steps I wrote down for like getting your makerspace in order is to take inventory of what you already have. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been through that process probably about half a dozen times just in the last couple years, because every time I move space, I've been through a lot of different spaces, a lot of different houses, a lot of different, living spaces and living situations, and I've had to redo my space every time. For a while I had a roommate, and I have a 2-bedroom townhouse, so we each had one room, and it had to be our bedroom and our creative space combined for each of us. So I had one set up while that was the case, and she moved out about a year and a half ago, and I had been hoping maybe I'd get another roommate, but that's not happening. So now I'm like, okay, I have an empty room and I'm going to completely redo everything. So yeah, definitely figuring out what kind of space you have and what kind of work you're going to be doing changes everything.
For sure. So you probably want to take into account things like square footage, height of your ceilings, your floor type, and also like what you want to get out of your space.
Yeah.
One of the big things I put down is cleaning, because a lot of times you don't know the space you have until you've gotten everything out of the way and go, okay, what can I do with this? And one of those big ones, one of the ones like I have a lot of trouble with is like letting go of costumes that I don't wear anymore, or costumes that I maybe half started and just have no drive to finish. So just like being able to let go of things is another really big one.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we were talking about how part of the cleaning and getting familiar, taking inventory is going through your old costumes and like things that you maybe don't need anymore, but like don't have the heart to quite get rid of. So if you want to add a few tips on that, like going through your inventory.
For me, it's always a mess. Everything comes out and everything is spread out because otherwise you can't see everything. So you have to make a mess before you can make it the way that you want it to be.
Gotta make a mess to make it clean.
Pretty much.
I know, like, whenever I'm cleaning, and I like to pull everything out so I can look at it all at the same time and be like, okay, this pile goes here, this pile goes here, this pile goes whatever. And it looks even worse than when I started, but at least I know where all the things are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's the only way to do it. You can't if you're starting over and you're creating a system, you can't really just leave stuff in there. You have to pull it all out and be like, oh, maybe you forgot you had this thing or this other thing. Like, I just had to clean out my garage, cleaning out all of my craft supplies, and realizing that, oh, wow, I didn't know I had 7 rolls of masking tape or 4 rolls of wire.
Whoopsie. Yeah. I know, like, for me, sometimes, like, if I don't have it in a place I can see it regularly, like, I'll have costumes that are half done and I won't touch them for like 2 years just because they don't come to mind at all. Like, I'll think about them in passing and just be like, eh. But if it's something I see regularly, I'm like, okay, I need to work on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
The old saying, out of sight, out of mind is very true.
So true. So once you have your space and we're looking, I think one of the next important things is like accessibility and like what are the important factors. Like if it's a permanent space or a temporary space is going to change what furniture you use. Does it need to be like easy to put away? Do you have enough outlets? Things like that. What would you say is most important for you when you're like analyzing a new space, like this room that you've got coming up?
So for me, because I've been doing this for, is it like 15 years or something now, I always lose count. But because I've done that, I've had a chance to really see what my habits are and what things I tend to focus on. And that's kind of helped me to structure the space and figure out, okay, this is what I need. So like for for 7 years, I'm going to have a dedicated, which I did not have for the last like several years. I've had just this one alcove in my room, and that was space, and I did what I could. And now I'm going to have a much space. Been starting to get into the photography side of cosplay.
So next we're talking about like accessibility, like what important factors, is it a permanent space versus a temporary space? Like what kind of stuff do you need, outlets, enough air, etc. And Krystal, I know you're setting up a brand new workspace in your upstairs. Tell us a little bit about what went into the planning for that.
Yeah, so what I was dealing with before is I think I mentioned this before, but I was living with a roommate and we lived in a 2-bedroom condo. So we each had our creative spaces in our bedroom spaces, and my bedroom has like this little alcove that I think most people use to put like a desk or a dresser or whatever, and I put my sewing space in there. And now that I don't have a roommate, I'm kind of spreading out and doing different thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this space where I've already set up my sewing space and I'm going to use it for different things. So I'm also getting into the photography side of cosplay stuff. So I want to be able to start doing some photography things. So a big portion of my room is actually going to end up being like temporary space. So I've got like my fixed space and then my temporary like flex space where I'm going to have some folding tables out for like cutting and crafting stuff, but also be able to like make them collapse and move them out of the way so that then I can use that corner of the room to do like studio style photography stuff.
Well, that's really clever.
Oh, that's a fun way to split things up there.
Yeah.
So like knowing in advance like what you wanted to do definitely helped you plan out the space, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, the fact that I already had my stuff kind of configured in a way that made sense for me in the alcove space, I realized that I had this big open space. And I was like, okay, it really makes more sense to utilize this space for things that don't have to like be against a wall, because a lot of the storage that you'll come up with and a lot of the organizational systems you'll come up with, you want to go vertical. You want to use your wall space because you may not have square footage to work with. So I just kind of default to a lot of those. So I've never really had the opportunity to have floor space. And I'm like, okay, now what do I get to do with floor space? This is exciting.
In that same vein, how would you say approach something like for maybe a messier project, like somewhere that you need like a lot of airflow because you're using like spray paints or you're doing sanding and things like that? How would you change and plan that space differently?
Well, for me, I'm really lucky because I do own a townhouse. I have a small garage and I don't use the garage for parking in. So I can actually go out there and I have one electrical outlet out there and I can plug in a box fan and have like air circulating and have the garage door open. But for a long time, I lived in an apartment and all I had was like this second story balcony space. And that was a challenge. A lot of the time, I ended up having to actually go to somebody else's space if I had to work on a project that was like really outside of my norms.
Same over here. That's what I had to do for the longest time.
Yeah. And sometimes that's just what you have to do. Like sometimes you end up picking your projects based on what kind of workspace you have, like what you have access to. So like for me, I didn't really get into making bigger projects until I had the space for them. They would be more rare things that I had to really plan around. And then I would go and use somebody else's space. You know, like I had some friends who they also lived in the apartment complex, but they rented a garage unit. So we would collectively use that garage space for like the big messy kind of stuff. Or like even to this day, like
nice.
I have a garage, but I will take a lot of big, like when I'm building sets, I'll go over to my parents' place because they have an even bigger garage.
That's really nice.
Yeah. So I have a lot of access to a lot of different spaces, but there's always things that you can do with whatever space you're given. But I find that I kind of pick my projects based on what I'm able to do. But if like for big cutting out stuff, like that more often than not, regardless of my living situation, has always ended up just I take stuff into my living room because it's the place that I can shove the furniture out of the way and actually have a big open space for cutting stuff. I know a lot of people really like having cutting tables. I've never had a cutting table. I've never had the space for a cutting table. So I'm gonna have something like that in my new space with my collapsible table setup that I want to do, and we'll see how much I use it. Like knowing me, I'll probably just end up folding them up against the wall and laying it out on the floor again because I'm apparently a masochist.
That's really
I did
really
like
cool.
one of the things you talked about with the sorry I cut you off there, Mercedes.
Oh, Pat, no, you're fine.
With like I know. With sharing a space with others or like doing like a group space. Because one of the things I used to do when I was in a cosplay group is we would do like group working on costumes, but we'd also do like group skit rehearsals. And if you just have like a library card, you can actually go to your local library and like I don't think it even costs. You just reserve a room for like an evening or a Saturday or something like that, and you can use a full room space.
That's
So-
really cool. I wish I had known
knowing
about
what
that.
Yeah,
That's genius.
right,
Like,
right. So like knowing what your options are like helps so much because we would get so much done in those like little cosplay cram sessions.
Wow.
I want to do that now.
I know
Yeah.
that sounds like really inspiring, but of course now I don't have like a whole lot of local people to do stuff with, and we're all so busy.
Oh,
Actually,
oh.
I wanna throw out there really quick on like the subject of being able to like pick up and go somewhere else. A lot of my friends like to do something kind of like crafting parties, but it's less party and more like we're just gonna like bulldoze our way through this costume.
Mhm.
And we'll go to someone else's place for it. We'll go
Yeah.
to someone else's place for it, and so as I've been organizing and working on my project space, I've tried to make it so that I can grab kits and also build my own kits depending on what I'm working on. I found these really
Ooh.
cool tote things at Home Depot. Like I love organization things.
Me too.
Yeah. I just have to refrain from like purchasing all of them. But
Yep.
there's these really cool ones that stack on each other and they lock together and then also can come apart separate into separate pieces, and I love it. I have a whole kit just for my leatherworking tools, and then I have a kit for my sewing machine, for my serger, for sewing in general, and then I have a couple empty ones that I fill up with, okay, I'm going to be working on such and such costume this week, so I'm going to put in these pieces for doing embroidery, and I can throw in these tools for cutting out the leather. Alright, cool, and I can close it up, and then I have a bag with my materials in it, and I can now just get up and go Like, if I wanted to go to a library and craft with my friends, I can get up and go with them. If someone needs to use my leather tools, I can just grab the kit and hand it off to them. I really am liking this very portable way of using things. Like, I do have enough room in my project room where I can have people over, but I can also get up and go and project with other people at their places too.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it also depends on like your working style. Like, are you the type of person who works better when you're surrounded by other people who are also working on stuff, or if you work better solo?
Oh,
And
yes.
like, I love the idea of being able to just like grab and go and know that you have all the tools and things you need with you. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I'm pretty mixed on like working with people and working by myself. It depends on like what part in the project I'm at. Because there's definitely a point that I reach where I'm like, if anybody interrupts me, I will cry. And no one wants to see that.
Oh no.
I used to do a lot more of the group crafting sessions than I do now, and they oftentimes ended up, because I was part of an established group at the time, we would often end up working on each other's projects.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm having trouble with this wig. Oh, here, let me do that. Can you sew this cuff for me? Okay. So we were like all at different stations.
That's so cute.
Yeah. I do miss that.
That is awesome. Yeah. So I guess with just to like wrap the part about accessibility, just when you guys are planning, like whether you're doing a kit, whether you're doing a room, whether you're doing like a temporary space, make sure you're planning out what you need your space to be. I think Krystal touched on that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But
well,
just make sure you have like a list of what you want that to be.
Yes. Yeah. Make a list of what you want it to be. One thing that I do when I like plan out stuff is I will actually pull out a grid and like one square will be 1 foot, and I'll draw out the room or the space that I have for my projects, and I'll be like, okay, this is how big my bookcase is, and I'll make like a paper cutout out of it. It's kind of like paper dolls, but with your room. And I kind of arrange the space that way before I actually physically move stuff. And sometimes I still will physically move stuff around because like I'll get in there, I'll like set up the bookcases and be like visually, that hurts my brain. And I'll change it around again, or, a million times, as my poor friend Brittany found out one day. We moved my bookcases like 5 times.
Oh my god.
But it kind of helps to give an idea of what to do. Like my project room is currently split into kind of 2-ish sections. I have the place for my computer, and there's a bookcase nearby it that has all of my game development books on it. And so that's like my art and game development side of the room. And then the other side has another desk for my sewing machines. I've got one of those like square boxy bookcase looking things that my sewing machines can slide into, and I can just reach over from that desk, grab a sewing machine, and plop it on my desk. And then I can trade out what I need. And that's also where some of my kits are at. And then I have another bookcase that has just all of my takeaway kits on it.
Nice.
So yeah. I like it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That actually kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about next, which is like your furniture and your equipment, like what kind of tools you need, what your space is going to be most used for. I love that idea of like being able to map things out really well, and knowing exactly where you want to put stuff. It's funny because like Krystal and I were actually like chatting about this just earlier today because she's looking for storage for her paint. But Krystal, what do you use mostly like when you're looking for like new furniture or a new organizer or things like that to like plot it out or where to find it, etc.?
So I'm kind of a mixed bag because I've been reshaping my collection of stuff over the years. Like what I started out with in my first apartment was completely different than what I have now. I figured out one piece at a time, basically what works best for me. One thing that I have that I really love, and I think everybody should have this if they have the chance, is a pegboard.
Yes.
My favorite thing in the world. I have a pegboard on one of my walls, and it is where all of my frequently accessed tools and accessories go. So all of my scissors, my rulers, my measuring tapes, my thread, my bobbins, like all of my used on almost every kind of project tool goes there, because then it's out in the open, but it's also put away. You know what I mean? Like it's organized, but it's right there when I need it at my fingertips. None of that out of sight, out of mind problem that we talked about earlier. One thing that I've really figured out for myself personally is that I don't like drawers, because for me, drawers can tend to get very messy, especially because there's so many little things involved with like sewing.
That makes sense.
So what I found out, for my current sewing table that I have, I actually just have, it's actually a writing desk, and it has one long, shallow drawer. So I'm able to put all these little dividers in it for things like my buttons and my snaps and my zippers and all of that. But because the drawer isn't deep, I don't have this instinct to just throw stuff in there because there's room. There isn't that empty void between the bottom of the drawer and the top of the drawer where things just pile up. You know what I'm talking about.
The junk drawer. I know the junk drawer.
Yes. And so all of my drawers would become junk drawers. So that's just something that I learned about me personally. And I think that's really a key thing, is just figuring out and paying attention to your own habits and then making adjustments for that. In that sense, my furniture has changed and all of that as I have started to focus on my habits. I read a phrase once that I thought was just absolutely perfect. Don't change your habit, change your habitat. So basically build it around the way that you naturally go. Because you might say that, you think that something should go in a certain place, but you're constantly leaving it somewhere else. Well, if you're constantly leaving it somewhere else, clearly that's where its home should be. So change your structure around that, and you'll just save yourself a lot of grief.
I really like that one.
Yeah. I love that phrase, and I really stick with it. As far as like actually finding the pieces, I'm kind of a mix. I spend a lot of time looking for stuff on Amazon. I look for ideas on Pinterest to see what other people have done. And I look for stuff at thrift stores a lot.
I love thrift stores.
Yes.
Yes. Like I really like that you mentioned about change your habitat, not your habits. Because I definitely need to do that, because I don't have drawers in mine. I just have bins, and I have lots of different sizes of bins. They're all bins, and I just feel like have this habit of throwing things into the bins. And when I need to find something, I can never like look and find it. But if it were out like up somewhere where I can visually see it, I'm not going to have that same issue. I love that.
Yeah, my favorite storage system, and I've used this in many different forms since I got it. I have this. Those standard like cube shelves that you see at like IKEA or in Target, just the cube shelves that are like everywhere.
Yeah.
The collect shelves at IKEA is what they're called. They're my favorite for my sewing machines.
Yes.
If you want to know which ones, I also have a particular bookcase that I really like, and I can't actually remember its name off the top of my head. Dang it, I was going to be clever. Okay, never mind.
I have a set of those cubes, and it's a 2x4 set of cubes, and for the longest time I just had it on the floor like it was just a shelf, and I kept my fabric in it. I would actually roll my fabric like little bricks and stack them, and so I could see every color and every fabric just at a glance, and if I needed to pull something out, I wasn't like completely messing up the entire thing.
That's really nice.
Now I have changed how I do things because just my habits and the way that I work has changed. So naturally, the way that I organize things has changed. So now I actually got those cubes mounted up on my wall. So they're like up high, like upper cabinet kind of style.
Nice.
And I have, and I have those canvas drawers now. And what I do is I actually sort materials by project now. I will put all of them in a cube, and then I have little index cards that I'll write down what project it is and which materials are in it. So like, for example, I have a cube right now that is nothing but materials for Snow White from Once Upon a Time. And so I'll write on it Snow White, and then I'll write jacket fabric, pants fabric, and then put in parentheses what it is. In this case, I think it's corduroy, and just list all the materials that are in there. And so sometimes I'll be able to fit more than one project in one cube. So I'll have like both of those listed on the index card, and then I just leave the index card on the drawer. So visually, to me, it looks cleaner, but I still know where everything is.
I love that.
Right.
I was gonna say I actually do something really similar with my collect shelves. I have the 2x8 ones.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it used, and so the top of the 2x8 is actually just one long shelf because it broke. So what I'm actually doing with it is that I've got 2 of those squares are for my sewing machines. Well, the main sewing machines that I use. The rest are stored elsewhere because I have 5 of them. And then I have one of those fabric bin things too, and that's what I put my current project in. It forces me to work on just one project at a time, and I have enough space that I could actually do a second one if I wanted to, but with how I focus, I really shouldn't work on more than that at a time.
So you mentioned like current ongoing projects, and that reminds me that I have a completely different section for where I keep those as opposed to keeping my materials, because I am the opposite. I can't work on just one project because I start to develop like this almost it becomes an obligation, and then I start to resent it. So I have to give myself the freedom to be able to go back and forth between projects. So I actually have these small, like these slim tubs. They're very small tubs, you know, they're not like the giant storage ones, but they are big enough that I can put the pieces for an in-progress project in them. So I have a separate tub per project, and then I have a small stack of those underneath my table. And that's how I limit myself, is I'm only allowed to be working on as many projects as I have these tubs. That's it.
I like that. Yeah. That's really clever.
Smart.
And the tubs are clear, so I see them. I know they're there. And again, with the trying not to put it out of sight and out of mind and forget about it, it's a constantly a reminder that this is here for me to work on.
That's clever. I like that. Yeah, my version of where my current like fabric stash for present and future projects is, I just have one bin. It's got this massive Shadow of the Colossus sticker that my sister made for me on the side of it. And so that's these are things I want to battle bin. And that has just fabric I've collected over time for different projects that I want to work on eventually. And then I have another bin that's just, I was going to use this fabric and then ended up not figuring out what to use it for, so it goes in this bin. And they just stack on each other and sit off to the side. I don't let myself have any more than that because I will run out of space. So that's how I limit myself.
Yeah. I tend to think of myself as like a goldfish. You give me more space and I will fill it. So I will grow as big as my bowl is. So I try to limit the space that I'm allowed to put stuff in, because then that kind of keeps me under control.
Nicely done.
So if I can actually circle back to one of the things you were talking about was thrift stores and where you find basically your organizers and things like that. Like, what goes through your head when you're going through a thrift store, when you're looking for a potential piece of furniture or a potential storage device?
So I tend to think about, what do I have and what do I need to store? And then I think of things that are similar to that. So I tend to look for pieces that obviously aren't necessarily intended for craft supplies or materials or whatever, but I think of something similar that would be used in that space. So like, for example, when I'm looking for little organizers for my drawers, I'll look for things like, okay, well, I know that these are a lot of little pieces. What goes into little pieces? Jewelry boxes. So like, I once found like a whole bunch of little, they were literally like the boxes that go around the velvet jewelry boxes. So like the packaging boxes for a bunch of jewelry. And I decoupaged those, and now I have all these little tiny trays, and they hold all my little bits and bobs in my drawer. Or like, I'll look for, I do a lot of Pinterest hunting for things like furniture upcycling. So I have a lot of ideas of ways that furniture can be repurposed. So I tend to go look for inspiration on Pinterest and be like, okay, what have people upcycled these types of furniture pieces into? And that kind of gives me an idea and kind of opens my brain a little bit to thinking, okay, what can I look for that could be used for something like this? I'll look in the kitchen stuff a lot for like little organizers for things because, kitchens have organizer systems for like utensils and spices and all that kind of stuff. And you'll find all sorts of little things that you would never really have thought of. At one point, I had this, I don't really know how to describe it. It kind of seems like it would have been like an outbox for mail or something. It would hang on the wall and it had like 3 little slots in it for like putting mail and stuff in. And for a while, I used that for patterns that I was currently working with. So if I was working on a project and like Frankensteining patterns together, those patterns would go in that little system because I recognized that.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I recognized, I tend to lose my pattern pieces or get them mixed up when I'm doing this because I mix patterns a lot. So that was one way for me to use that. So it's a lot of just creative thinking and just looking and seeing what's there and then looking at the shape and thinking about what you have and how it could fit.
I like
Very
that a
nice.
lot. I think that actually fits really well with what most cosplayers do when they're looking at a costume. Because you'll see like these crazy projects, these crazy like impossible designs, and people will think of these out of the box ways to build them, and a lot of it is thrifted, a lot of it is upcycled, and it's almost in the same vein there.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, once you have that creative side of your brain tuned into using things for not their intended purpose, as I like to say, you come up with lots of different ideas.
Yeah.
And, if you look
Very cool.
if you look online, you can find ways to modify different things. Like you might find a basic bookcase and you're like, okay, well, I know that I can put stuff on this bookcase, but maybe the gaps between the shelves are too big. And you think, oh, well, I'm going to stack a whole lot of stuff and this isn't going to be good. Maybe you want that more broken up. You can find things online for like how you could make additional dividers by like piecing together foam core boards from like the dollar store and making more dividers on those shelves. So there's a lot of different ways that you can.
We've talked a lot.
Oh,
sorry. Sorry.
No, that's it.
You cut out for a second, so I thought it was done.
Nope. She was still talking.
I do that a lot. No, I was just saying there's a lot of ways that you can augment pieces that you find.
I was gonna say I wanna brag for a second. My sister Rayata actually
do it.
she took what were they? They were like crates, like the little wooden crates, and she actually made her own bookcase and coffee table out of them, and they are so freaking adorable.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I also wanted to throw out there too that like doing the whole like DIY furniture sort of things, like not only do you get like a customized thing for your space, you can customize it to whatever colors you like in your space. Because like I like blacks and silvers, and so that's what most of my furniture in my room is. So.
And that's a really great thing too. Like if you're looking to save money, like one thing that I found that helps me creatively with my space and keeping it organized is even if all the pieces don't necessarily go together, if they're all the same color, it creates this sort of visual trick that you think, oh, this is all cohesive, this all goes together. So you can pick up things at the thrift store or DIY your stuff, and as long as you like make them all the same color, it like tricks your brain into thinking, oh, this all goes together.
Nice. Since we've talked a lot a bit about like some of the smaller stuff, organizing things into little boxes, but I also wanted to touch on how to organize some of our bigger, more like awkward to store projects. Do you guys have any tips for storing and or storing while building things like armor, things like larger props? I know just recently, Krystal, you were doing the C4 competition in the Netherlands, and you had Palutena from Kid Icarus. How was that like to have to like store and make and pull out and find space for?
I wish I had an answer for that. Honestly, Palutena has lived in a cardboard moving box that has moved around the house with me while I've worked on her. For a few months, she lived in the suitcase because I had no idea what I was going to do with her. And right now she is now living in a cardboard box again because I'm getting ready to completely tear everything apart and redo my stuff. So I haven't figured that one out yet.
How about you, Mercedes? I know you do some of like bigger armory builds and leathery builds that are hard to store flat. Do you have any advice on that one?
Yes, I do actually. So in my new space, as far as like storing that kind of stuff, I have a bigger room, but I have a smaller closet now. And so what I've done is I've dedicated this closet to storing all my finished cosplays. Like, the only supplies that go in there is my leather because it smells. And like every time I open up the closet, I'm just like, whew. But yeah, there's the top shelf in my closet. Makes this weird U shape. But that's where I keep all my props right now, and it fits really well actually. It's keeping them all nice and safe. They're not rubbing up against things, or I do need to have a footstool to reach them. But as long as I'm not trying to yank one down, they shouldn't fall and, murder me. A couple of my props I actually hang up on the walls, or will be here soon. I'm going to be hanging up on the walls for display in my project space. And so that's one way that you can kind of like store something is by putting it up on display. As well as I have individual, like the paper boxes that they like give to printing places, like the cardboard printer boxes. Each of those are a different costume or multiple costumes depending on how big they are. It has all the pieces in there. If the props are small enough, those are also in there. And so like if I'm getting ready for a convention and I'm like, okay, where is Chic? Okay, here she is, this box, and I can grab it and go. I don't fly to many conventions, so I don't have like a suitcase or anything that I super worry about because I usually drive. But like if I were flying, that would still work because I could just pull the box out and then pack it into a suitcase.
I like that.
Yeah, I could also put in those boxes.
This is the last question I wanted to go over.
Stuff safe. Sorry, lag. For keeping stuff safe
you're good.
while they were flying in a way as well. So that's an idea. I'm gonna log that one in the back of my brain.
Yes.
Okay, Pan and go.
I was gonna say my last question for you guys. Like, what do you wish? What advice do you wish you had heard when you were starting out with your very first makerspace? Or like, what's the most common issue that you have run into that has an easy fix?
Oh, like honestly, just knowing your space and knowing how you're going to use it, whether it's going to be your dedicated space or whether it's a space that you have to share with another purpose. Like, just spending some time in your space and getting to know your space and what it has to do for you can go a long way in helping you figure out the best way to configure it. And you're probably going to change it like a dozen times as you figure out how it works, but that's just kind of part of the process.
I like that.
Me too.
How about you, Mercedes?
Just trial and error. Just as you figure out your styles and things, just like I don't know. I don't know if like anyone would have like told me anything. Don't spray paint inside. That should be a given.
Oh God.
Oh please.
Yeah.
Please don't do that one.
I guess that would be an important thing is considering what you're working with and picking your space appropriately. Like, don't use toxic things inside. Make sure that you're using the right things in the right spaces. Be safe.
Yes. E6, that's outside and with a mask. Like, don't use E6 inside without a mask kind of things. Like, be safe with what you're using. Read the labels. Try and like
read the labels. Yes.
If you're in a small apartment, make friends with other cosplayers in the community who do have spaces like garages and things like that, and spread it out. See if there's a makerspace nearby. I love makerspaces.
Yeah, I was going to say that's been a big thing, is more makerspaces readily available to people. Like, they have not just a space available to work, but like equipment, like 3D printers, like embroidery machines, like all kinds of tools. And those are hugely like make things so much easier.
Yeah.
And here's another thing is if you're doing a project that you don't think you're necessarily going to be doing a lot of stuff with, like if you're like, okay, I'm going to do this one project like this.
I like yeah, so my question is, like, what is your favorite like thing in your project space that you've used to organize stuff? Like for me right now, it's my shelves that I have my sewing machines on that I can just reach over and grab a machine, and that's my favorite thing right now.
Definitely my favorite thing, and it has been like this for years, and I touched on it a little bit, is definitely my pegboard. I mean, it has made a world of difference. It's perfect. I don't know how I lived without one, and it's the one thing that as soon as people talk about how do I organize my space, I always say, get a pegboard.
That's a good one. Pegboard is so helpful. For me, I would say it's those clear drawers that can kind of stack. I love using that for like my tools. Like I have one for like resin, I have one for like wig styling, I have one for notions, and I can see at least like the beginnings of what's in each drawer so I know what's there. And just separating it out that way. And I like those because you can stack them and they stack vertically up pretty high, so I don't feel like I'm wasting space that way.
Oh yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
But yeah, that's good advice. Thanks, everybody. So we like to end with a cosplay horror story. All right, so tell us your lovely cosplay horror story.
Oh gosh,
or
I have so many of them.
If you'd like.
It's very hard to pick one, but since I am just about ready to dive into working on Garnet's gown from Final Fantasy IX, I'm gonna go back to the very first time I made a Garnet costume, which was in 2008, when I was a wee baby cosplayer and did not understand many, many things. So my cosplay, this story is also one of the many reasons why I take a certain mentality when it comes to finishing my costumes. So this horror story takes place over the course of several days. So we were preparing for SakuraCon 2008, and I had been talking about Final Fantasy IX for years, and like among my friends, I was basically the only person who really liked this game, but they all decided that they were going to nudge me into making Garnet, and they were all going to cosplay Final Fantasy IX with me, even though I did not. It was very sweet, but I also did not feel ready to make this costume. I had only been seriously cosplaying for about 2 years. So that was a new thing for me to kind of like, okay, I'm going to jump into this. And, you know, I was doing pretty well. I was doing okay with it, but I did not pick a good fabric because this was also during the time period where I cared more about color than understanding the properties of the fabric. So the fabric that I got was like a knit of some kind, but it was like not a super stretchy knit. So I ended up having to do a lot of weird tailoring to get this bodysuit to fit.
Oh boy, and that's such a difficult color too.
So I'm getting down to the wire working on this costume. Like my friend came out from Chicago for this convention and was there a couple days before the con, and we were like trying to crunch and finish this. And this was like the very first time that I was coming up on a thing where I was like, oh my God, I don't think I'm going to finish this costume. Like, I don't think this is going to get done.
Oh no.
And so here I am in tears. It's like the day before, and my mom is telling me, you are so upset by this. Just don't worry about it. Just don't finish it. And I was like, okay, you know, I had like mentally reconciled myself. And my best friend who was there with me, she had also been like, it's okay. Now we just have to tell the other girls, you know, it's not going to happen. Because they had been leaning on us real hard to get these done. And we contact them and we're like, hey, so I don't think it's going to happen. This costume's not going to get done. And that's when they decided to tell us that they had made surprise props for everybody in our group. So now I'm in this. Yeah. So now I'm in this situation where I feel like a jerk because if I don't finish, they've done all this stuff for me. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm finishing the costume. So we end up going to the convention and my costume is not done. Okay, I'm busting my butt on it, but it is not done. There was a sewing machine in the hotel room. I stayed up So we went to the convention because these costumes were for part of the weekend, but we didn't know when we were going to wear them. So we go to the convention on Friday, and then we come back at the end of the night on Friday, and we rehearse our skit because we're also competing in the cosplay contest. Not with these costumes, mind you. Different set of costumes.
Oh,
So my costume is still not done at this point. I had been sewing Thursday night in the hotel room. We go to the con Friday. We rehearse Friday night. I come back to the hotel room. Everybody else goes to sleep. And I stay up all night sewing this darn costume. I hadn't been able to put the grommets in it for the front because I didn't understand grommets at the time, and apparently I needed a hammer. So we spent part of Friday going around the shopping centers in Seattle trying to find a hammer. No hammer was ever acquired. I ended up hot gluing them in. I did not have any idea how I was going to attach the belts and the belt pads and stuff to the legs. And I ran out of time to figure it out. So they also got hot glued onto the costume. And at the very last minute, I was like, my pants are too long, you know? And of course, I didn't think just bunch it and go with it. No, I cut them off at my ankle. Didn't hem them or anything, just cut them off at my ankle, only to realize later that if you were not at exactly eye level with my boots, you could glance down and see my ankle in my boot. Like,
no.
So I was a hot mess, okay? I was a hot mess. Finished this costume having gotten basically no sleep on Friday night. And we get up and we get into these costumes and we go marching down to the convention center. So the costume was done, but it was the reason why I say if I have to take a machine to a convention, the costume's not getting done. It's not coming. It's not coming with me. So that is probably my ultimate Final Fantasy cosplay horror story, and is probably part of the reason why I've taken so long to remake this costume, because I have PTSD. But on the plus side, we walk out of the hotel and we go down to the convention center, and there's 4 of us. We're dressed as Garnet, Zidane, Freya, and Beatrix. And lo and behold, we run into an identical set of characters. And that was when I met Cannon for the first time.
That is the first time we met, yes.
That is the very first time that we met. So yeah. And then I was so mad at my group that when we changed out of our costumes for the contest later, like, I found you guys and went and hung out with you in the green room instead.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if you guys know this, but like, I have cosplayed 9 a lot, and yeah, I think Beatrice that year.
Yes, you were.
Or Beatrix, yeah. Yeah, that crazy. Was fun. I'm sad you went through so much behind the scenes, but it was really cool to see another Final Fantasy IX group and be like, someone else loves this game.
It was like that moment, kind of like made it all worth it. But God, it was hell leading up to it.
Yeah. Oh man. Cool. Let's see. Did you have another one that you wanted to do?
I think that one takes the cake.
Good one. It was a really good one.
That was a good one. One more.
It had all the hallmarks. It had all the important bits. You know,
yes,
it had the sewing in the hotel room.
It definitely does.
Sewing in the hotel room, hot glue in place of things that should not be hot glued. Like, it has all the important things.
Absolutely. For our listeners, go ahead and give us your information where they can follow you online, your website, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier, but it's best place to find me is on Instagram, but you can find me basically anywhere as Sumikins. If there's an account that says Sumikins, it's probably me. Or you can check out my website, which is sumikinscosplay.com.
Yay!
And what are some of your upcoming projects?
So right now I am heading into competition hell. I'm getting ready to work on Garnet's royal gown from Final Fantasy IX.
Crazy.
Yes. Yes, but it has been like my dream costume since like 2008, so it's finally happening. So that's great.
Nice.
Well, I'm really excited to see it. I think it's
Nice.
going to be amazing.
I hope it turns out good.
Yeah. Well, you guys now know where you can follow her progress. If you would like to send us your own horror stories, uplifting fun stories, or just something you learned through cosplay, you can email us at CosplayStitchandSeam@gmail.com, or
again, you can go to the website at www.CosplayStitchandSeam.com and fill out the contact form there. Always love seeing the stories come in, and some of you sometimes just say hi, and it's like, hello back, you're so cute.
yay! And of course, there's our Facebook group where we do Work in Progress Wednesdays and other fun memes that you can share. Lots of fun, amazing, talented people in our community. One of the things I love is if you are having a struggle with one of your cosplays and you need advice, everyone has some fantastic ideas. Everyone's really quick to share things that they've learned. And I just love that about our community.
It's
really
super
good.
awesome.
Yay!
I love them.
Yes. Yes. Thanks as always to Macy Roberts for our music.
And sound editing by
Me, David Jeffress of Dungeons and Chill and Comic Trades Monthly.
Tell us about your projects, David.
Yeah. Comic Trades. This month we finished reading Hawkeye: My Life as a Weapon, written by Matt Fraction. I can't recommend that book high enough. If you don't have the time to go to your library and pick it up, go listen to that episode because we gush about it. Next month we are reading the creator of Invader Zim, Jonan Vasquez, first book, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Oh my goodness, that takes me back to high school.
Yep,
Oh,
you
yes.
and me both. So we'll be doing that next month for the month of August, and we're super excited about that one too.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I know with October and Bonsai and all those Halloween things coming up, well, I never know which craft to start working on. Until next time, intend your puns, you cowards.
Oh my goodness.
Bye, guys.
Oh, I love puns.